We watched as the staff guided the princess from the room, one at her arm as she made her way at a pace no one would dare rush. Edmund lingered a step behind them, not from hesitation, but because she required it of him, pausing when she did, allowing her the breath she would not ask for. Father saw my mother into her coat and held there until the princess' door had been audibly shut. "I suppose we shall see you at supper then?" he asked. It wasn't his habit to forego his standing leisure arrangements, nor was it hers, and neither was given to rearranging them without reason, but I suppose Grace's return would disrupt many routines for the foreseeable future. My hand came to Grace's back, and I drew her in closer, pinning her at my hip. The ghost he'd once tried to persuade me did not exist stood now at my side, and I held her without the slightest effort to diminish how wrong he'd been. "We look forward to it," I said. Father acknowledged it with a nod, though there was the suggestion of a smile at the corner of his mouth before he turned Mother towards the door and the doorman pulled it open for them. He hadn't been an easy man to please, nor had he raised us with any expectation that he should be. His family's name had been carried through war and command for generations, and we were raised to match it or be found lacking. I spent all my life measured against that standard, and then I left for the colonies. What I went after had never been his concern. It had not been a campaign, nor a duty he could name or approve of. I'd only been a boy chasing something no one else outside Blackmere believed would be found. But I did what I said I would, and now the keeping of Blackmere rested squarely in my hands. And whether he meant to show it or not, the measure of my worth had shifted drastically to everyone who mattered. Not that it displeased him. If anything, he seemed amused at knowing the authority of all our lands would soon rest in his lastborn. I turned towards the stairs and urged Grace on, leading her up onto the first step. "If you do not sleep the day away," I said as we came to the first landing, "I should like to walk the grounds. I have something I wish to show you." I turned with her at the landing and took the left, my hand shifting as we did so, settling at her hip, lower than it ought to have been. "And I should very much like to see it," she said, smiling in a way that said she'd noticed and was enjoying it. I stopped at the first door on the left and opened it, stepping aside to let her in. But first, I thought we would revisit the past. Her breath caught the moment she crossed the threshold of her childhood bedroom. Nothing had been touched. Not in all the years she'd been gone. The room had been left as it was the day she walked out last, not out of neglect, but because it had never been abandoned in the first place. Like me, or perhaps because of me, her grandparents never gave up hope she'd be found. Not once. I'd not allow it. She moved through the room, her fingers passing over the books as she went. Then she stopped at the small music box on the table. She opened it and the little ballerina unfolded, spinning to the tune, loud and bright at first before giving up on itself, as it hadn't been wound in years. Moving on, she reached for the photograph set in the frame with diamond flowers set into it. It was us dancing at my brother's wedding, taken not long before she dragged me off for our first kiss. She turned it towards me with a look that made it clear she remembered the moment well enough. "I had such fun that night," she said as she set it down again. As if the years between were but an inconvenience that kept her from it too long, she climbed onto the bed and let out a breathy purr of a sound that made me ache in places I dare not name. "So did I said. She stretched out and turned onto her back, her head falling towards me. I used to lie here and stare up at the ceiling at night and wish I might marry Christian Ashcombe. I'd spent years wondering if I crossed her mind at all, or if I carried the whole of it myself. Hearing her speak that way eased nothing, though. It only set my blood raging through me. Her hand went above her head and under the pillow, drawing out a small leather book, which she lifted and gave a pointed shake in my direction. "It is all here," she said. "I practiced writing our names and drew out the dress I meant to wear. I believe I even finalized the guest list." If she had any notion of how many similar books I kept, set aside, and added to over the years, she would make sport of me for it without end. You might do well to dust it off, I said. I expect Edmund has already set the date with the chapel. She got off the bed with the journal in hand and moved past me. I gave her the room to go ahead before reaching back and switching off the light. Are you still agreeable to the terms of the contract then? She asked. I care nothing about the contract, I said, taking her with me down the hall. I have you, and that secures Blackmere well enough, which is all I ever wanted. The distance between our rooms was nothing, but I walked her to her outer chamber, and no further. The rest is yours to keep, if you like. I took her hand and lifted it, keeping to what was appropriate for me as I put my lips to her knuckles, though no one else lived on this wing to stop me from taking more. She backed towards the wall, pulling me with her, until the wall stopped us both. That will not do, she said. I spent the better part of my life in the pursuit of returning her to this house, to her family, and to me. I had not gone to such lengths only to behave as though she were a stranger to me now. Besides, she still held the authority over me to take whatever she wished, so I gave the lady what she demanded. My hands came to her face and held her, not with the caution I had observed before, but with a certainty I had long denied myself. There'd been no place for this in Hearthwick, not under those conditions, not while she was still being put right. But that was finished now, and I found I had far less discipline for it than I once believed. I kissed her properly, not as something offered or returned, but as something taken hold of at last. For a moment, I lost sight of everything beyond it. Thought gave way entirely, and I understood how poorly I had accounted for how her mouth would feel against mine. How I had allowed myself to believe that the kiss we shared as children might not be as perfect as I remembered, that time or distance had made more of it in my mind than it really was. It had not. If anything, I had diminished it in every way possible, and it struck me with such force that it seemed impossible I had ever gone without it. But if I hadn't chosen an ending to it, there wouldn't have been one. She would have taken what I gave and pressed for more, because that was her way with me. She set the measure, and I'd always been the one to meet it. And I would have. That was the thing of it. It was so difficult to tell her no. So I broke free of her instead, not abruptly, nor in a way to make light of it, but because I knew well enough where it would lead if I didn't. And I simply wasn't ready to go further yet. She said nothing as she made her way from me, keeping to the wall, her breath heavy and fast, and her cheeks flushed as she licked away the trace of me still upon her mouth. Marking the moment with a curtsy first, she opened the door to slip inside and closed it between us again. I admit I nearly went in after her. My hand clutched the knob, and every part of me urged me to turn it. Then I heard her within, movement, the soft fall of fabric as she went about the simple business of undressing. But I only closed my eyes and rested my forehead against the door, letting the sounds carry until they gave way to silence. I let go of the handle and stepped back twice, enough to remind myself of the danger I was in if I remained a moment longer. But the effect of her lips tangled with mine lingered more stubbornly than the bottle of wine we shared earlier, enough to leave my head not quite right. So when I turned to leave, I stood there a moment, taking a breath to clear my mind before I went on. On the way to my room, I paused at the nursery door long enough to lay a hand on it before moving on. It remained untouched since Grace last played in it, and for a long while I feared that wouldn't change. But, God willing, by that time the following year, it would know a baby's cries again. I went on to my room and shut the door behind me. It was a strange thing that after so many years of sleepless nights spent worrying about everything, I found I had nothing left to account for, and sleep came the moment I shut my eyes.